All right, well, it is a race war in New York City over the death of a black man. We are being invited to take a side by politicians and sort of split the world into right and wrong, black and white, rich, poor. All of these things are at play here. Meanwhile, there are plenty of tragic deaths around the world, but this is the one that the media and people in power want to suck us in and rile us up about. And so why? I want to sort of encourage those of you watching not to sort of just, say something shitty on Twitter and like, this is the way the world was. This guy deserved it. This guy shouldn't have done that. That guy's a hero, right? When we do that, no one is winning the culture war except politicians. And they are not using that power that we hand them to make anyone's lives better. I don't think any of us would make the case that we are all better off now because of Black Lives Matter protests. So let's break down this story. And here is a warning that people who have attached themselves to this outcome don't want you to see all sides of this story. Tweets like this are leading you to scream injustice without even thinking. So here's the Newsweek headline that came out about the person who died, Jordan Neely, saying that he had a criminal record and 40 prior arrests. This person on Twitter is saying this is a trash headline because it implies there's a certain amount of crime that justified this murder. So here we're being invited to say, doesn't matter what this person was like, doesn't matter what his demeanor showed us about who he was. We should only just break this down in right and wrong. Don't even see any context of this story. So he is saying, wrinkles here, that we should ignore this person's history because this person is committed to this racial narrative, but we can't ignore it. So here's the man who died. His name was Jordan Neely. He was 30 years old. He was relatively well known in New York City in the subway system as a Michael Jackson impersonator. I unfortunately can't show you the music here. He's dancing to Beat It fairly expertly, I would say. He was like the, not that authentic Elmo on Times Square. I'd say he was more authentic as Michael Jackson. Locals knew him, is what I'm trying to say. Now, last week, Neely was acting erratic on the F train, and 3 men worked together to put him in a chokehold. Here is a still image of that chokehold because of the restrictions around what I can show you. The man on the bottom is ex-Marine named Daniel Penny. Immediately after this news broke, liberals were quick to reduce this to a heroic black man getting unjustly killed by a pumped up white military beef smoker. And then we've got, George Floyd, Derek Chauvin situation, another one to exploit, right? Like beefy dude, white guy, and vulnerable black man. Although that altercation may not be what it seems as an archetype, but we're just going to kind of go with it, like megalomaniac white guy and then black docile hero. Now, this is how liberal voices presented it right away. Here's AOC saying that this was a murder, but because he was houseless and crying for food in a time when the city is raising rents and stripping services to militarize itself, while many in power demonize the poor, the murderer gets protected with passive headlines and no charges. Disgusting, she says. She further went on to say that, she wants to hear a real explanation that this is killing and killing is wrong. What she says at the bottom here is amazing, sort of reframing of a narrative according to what you want to say. She says Neely's last words were literally about how going to jail was easier than accessing the social safety net. Accessing the social safety net support to get back on his feet and lead a life. Now, okay, I love how she reframes his last words, that he compared a social safety net to going to jail. What he said was that he wanted food and he was willing to go back to jail for it. He's not presenting a social commentary as if he's sort of pontificating on the social order and weighing his choices rationally, like, I'm very hungry. Shall I commit violence in order to eat and risk jail? I shall scream about it. No, he was erratic. Clearly not. He's not saying, oh, it would be easier to go to jail than access social services. So I'm going to scream and make a ruckus about it. A fellow passenger say that he was yelling and threatening other people in an aggressive manner and yelling that he had no food, he had no drink, and he was tired and didn't care if he went back to jail. This is from a witness who filmed the altercation, the video that we've all seen mostly. Now, this video made the rounds last week, but this week, starting May 8th, most local news sites, including CNN, have removed video from this man. They still quote him. I had to dig and dig to find it on a Canadian news site, CTV, and listen to how he described it in the immediate aftermath.
Start to yelling, violence, language. I don't care if I die. I don't care if I go into jail. I don't have any food. I don't have any beverage. I'm done. And then he put out the jacket and hitting on the floor.
Juan Alberto Vasquez was there and says despite any aggressive and frightening behavior, Neely hadn't attacked anyone, even if he was making passengers uncomfortable. Not long after, Vasquez says, another passenger came up behind Neely and put him in a chokehold. Vasquez says he didn't hear any interaction between them beforehand, he just heard them fall to the ground. He shot this video minutes into the altercation.
We arrive at the station, the doors open, all the people run away, and the guys stay in this position about 8 or 7, 8 minutes.
7 or 8 minutes.
7 or 8 minutes. Keep that in your mind. Now, I think it's amazing conundrum here that a lot of the same liberals who are saying that Neely was violent but not, or aggressive but not violent, are what they're saying. Like, he was not violent. He was being erratic. He was acting, saying aggressive words, but he wasn't violent, so there's no cause
reason
to take him to the floor. These are the same people that say words are violence when it comes to gender ideology. So if I misgender you or dead name you, those words are violence, and therefore you are worthy of being attacked for those types of words.
Now just imagine for a second, I couldn't help but think, imagine if we were sitting on an airplane, right? And then suddenly someone got up and started doing what he was doing, acting erratically, started yelling at everyone, throwing things down, yelling like he was going to...
But we do see this kind of behavior when somebody misgenders somebody, and then trans rights activists throw those people to the ground.
Right.
Right.
I saw that at Starbucks too.
And that's fine. So as long as he, doesn't misgender somebody, I guess his words are not violence. But other types of words are. You cannot have it both ways ideologically.
But I guess they want to have it both ways.
Yes.
And they're hoping that we won't discuss the nuance, which is what we try to do here on the show.
Yeah. Now, Vasquez is the man that filmed this assault, and he had his account of it on Facebook, and it has since been taken down. He wrote it in Spanish. There is still some screenshots that you can find about it, but it's not live.
Did Facebook take it down?
I'm not sure, but he now is saying that he regrets ever having given his name because he's being harassed. Now, in order to verify a narrative that is not so simple, because he's the one who's saying, the guy was acting aggressively. He was threatening people. He, threw his jacket down aggressively. And you don't know in that situation. So plenty of people are saying, like, how come no one helped him? How come no one, pulled him out of the chokehold? Here is what he said to NBC just recently. He said, he acted aggressively, but he hadn't attacked anybody. But then look at this. He says, one thing's he may be armed. And so this is the world we live in, right? In the wake of this death, people are sort of quick to judge what the passengers did or didn't do. But of course, all of us live in a world where we're worried that someone might have a gun. Of course. You can't blame somebody for saying like, go ahead, Philip.
I was going to say that happened a couple years ago in Portland where a guy was acting erratically and yelling at this woman, and 3 guys stepped in to stop it, and they got stabbed. I think 1 or 2 of them died. I can't remember. And then I think the 3rd one lived. But yeah, they like stabbed him in the throat. And so it's just like, you don't know. You
really don't know. So who are we to judge who did or did not step in when he was being aggressive? And in that moment, you don't know how far this is going to go. And to your point, like, what if I had been sitting there with my 6-year-old, right? I definitely would have been like, oh no, let him Let him go.
Yeah, this
Let him
isn't
walk
funny.
around.
Like, hey, 6-year-old, look at this guy. He's being funny.
Yeah.
He's threatening everyone here on the train and throwing his stuff down and acting erratically. Let me move closer to him.
Now, here's another witness that said they were, sort of far down the subway cart and they hadn't heard any commotion. But this person said, I walked up to my seat and walked towards where the commotion was and said, what's going on? And the other people said this guy was threatening people and throwing trash. And the other one said, he was threatening people on the train. So this is what other passengers are saying to each other as they're watching, like, this guy's holding him down because he was threatening everybody on the train. This was their collective sentiment, I want to say. And here's another eyewitness that said, okay, we see this guy holding him down. It didn't look like it was going to be forever. The guy wasn't punching or beating him up. It just seemed as if he was restraining him physically as much as he could, like keep him from moving
until
around.
authorities could arrive.
Now, another video, which we've chosen not to show you just because of the rules around showing you people who are harmed on these platforms. But in the video, you can see the men putting him in a recovery position after the chokehold is released and speaking to him and saying, we needed to hold you down. The police are going to come. We did this. Someone says something about military, like I was in the military or this is what we do in the military.
You turn him into a recovery position on the side so he doesn't choke and then he can recover, but now he's basically subdued.
Yes.
Right? Yes.
And he is alive, clearly unwell in this video, but alive. Now, we will link you to it in the newsletter, but again, the rules here about sort of showing it to you, we are hamstrung.
Yeah, we'll get blocked basically if we show it. They will not show this video, and we'll get an alert and the whole thing. And so anyway,
it's not a choice we make easily, and every day we sort of go around like, can we say this? Can we say this way? This is just an editorial call we're making in order to preserve our channel, not because we don't think you can handle it. And I apologize if it comes off that way. Now, does this break down the narrative that he was murdered? Well, a court and an investigation obviously should take care of that. It absolutely should not be us screaming about what happened definitively, but to protesters, this is a condemnation. And we're going to get to the protests in a minute, but let's talk about Neely because he did have a history of hurting people. And he was clearly a hurt person himself. His mother was murdered by her boyfriend in 2007, and Neely had to testify against the murder at trial. He has been in and out of a hospital for years. Police confirmed that they've had complaints of him being drunk and threatening people, which is what we have again in this situation. In 2021, he was put in jail for hitting an older woman on the head, punching another person in the face. Here's presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy summarizing his priors. 2015, kidnapped 7-year-old girl. 2019, punched a 64-year-old man in the face. 2021, slugged a 67-year-old woman in the face as she exited the subway, breaking her nose and fracturing her orbital bone. 44 arrests. Never faced real justice for terrorizing New Yorkers. Now, his point is that the Manhattan DA shares responsibility for this death, for having him just freely walk about the streets, terrorizing people. There have been several Reddit threads that were picked up from the last 10 years where people were warning about the Michael Jackson impersonator that, hey, if you see him, stay away. He's threatening now. He is, doing these certain things to people. There are also, though, plenty of aggressive videos of other Black men that are clearly not Jordan Neely making the rounds. So don't just share anything before you know for real what it is. But again, are we supposed to think that nervous people on the subway with an erratically acting person, we're not justified in jumping to conclusions about how far he might go? You just don't know. And it's not anybody's fault that we are all scared of the world we live in, especially in urban centers. Again, think of yourself sitting with your youngest child in a car. I would have been nervous too. Now the coroner.
This kind of reminds.
Go ahead,
real
please.
quick. It reminds me of a meme that I actually just shared. Oops, sorry, my camera's off.
I was like,
a meme that I just shared on Facebook this week that says, in 1989, the Joker became the Joker being dropped in a vat of acid. But in 2019, it was because he was dropped into society. And it's like, you have a man that obviously was happy at one time doing Michael Jackson stuff. And it's like, society is just so messed up that like they're just stuck in this system. And you can kind of see how you can become disenfranchised with everything.
Or he didn't get
Sure.
help. Yeah, there was a system that didn't provide help for him, whatever mental problems. And people are asking in the chat, are you justifying his murder? That's what people are asking.
Clearly
No,
not.
And also think about this. AOC, the person saying all this stuff, is one of the people that has voted against things that could have been there to help this person.
Yeah.
Oh, time and time again. Yeah.
Now,
So-
the coroner, medical examiner, that is, says that this death was a homicide, but has also asked for more tests. Presumably toxicology. Will we see this? Who knows? We were not allowed to see the toxicology tests from George Floyd's death, which showed that he had enough narcotics in his body to basically kill a large animal. And we were not allowed to see that because the media and the Democratic Party wanted this sort of white-black narrative. It really worked in their favor, and it is an uncomfortable truth. Also, George Floyd's dealer that was sitting in the car with him was allowed to plead the fifth so that he did not incriminate himself for possibly selling him all of these drugs. So, will we find out if he had some side of substance that was making Jordan Neely act erratically, or will that be withheld from us? We don't know. And again, my point is not what happened. I can't tell you who was justified, who was not, what exactly is the right way to feel about it. Neither can Twitter. Neither can protesters. Nobody can tell you the right way to feel about it when it is an obviously sad story. Someone died. Like I tell my kids all the time, hurt people hurt people. So why were any of these people hurting? What's beyond that? But again, I think that we are not served by reducing this to a racial crime, period. People are now calling the name of Jordan Neely in the streets. Who is served by making this a heroic archetype? What are they asking people then to raise up? Now, they're also using the number 15 a lot for reports that he was in the chokehold for 15 minutes, even though Vasquez clearly wrote in that Facebook post that he was there for 5 minutes and then later said on TV it was 6 or 7. Now, here are some protests in New York City over the weekend with protesters standing on the subway tracks as if this New York subway system itself is responsible for this.
No justice, no peace is what they're shouting. No justice, no peace.
All right, that's
So-
probably enough of this one.
Yeah.
It goes on like that. Now, here's another guy that was trying to just ride the train to work, and white protesters are telling him he shouldn't do that, and also, this is how you should feel, black guy.
Get out of her face. Get out of her face. You can get out of the train or something. Get out of her face. Get out of her face.
So get another train. Take another train.
He's like, I'm trying to go to work.
You're not getting off this train. Bro, you hurting her right now,
So the white people are telling, she's telling him.
Yeah.
Get off the train.
She was saying, and the black woman was saying, don't use that as an excuse. Don't use that as an excuse
Now,
that you have to go to work.
I feel like this is racist, telling this person he should feel this way because of the color of his skin. And also, how is this guy missing out on a day of work going to help anybody, especially this race discussion? So, a grand jury.
And by the way, how is shutting down a subway helping it? This is a thing that I never understood. It's like you have people who rely on public transportation to get to work. They don't own a car. They're using public transportation. How is shutting down public transportation for your protest? How is, throwing soup or whatever, or lying in front of buses like these climate activists do, shutting down public transportation? How does that help your climate cause?
Yeah.
I think in many ways, obviously, it hurts your cause.
It really just pisses people off more than anything. Like it makes them not want to have anything to do with your cause.
Right.
Yes, but it does still encourage this knee-jerk reaction of like, this was justified or this was not justified. This was murder and a murderous white dude, or this was a black guy who seemed to deserve it, or whatever the narrative that's being just thrown at you like soup, like cans of soup, that just does not help. And again, we see time and time again that when we get riled up about this sort of race baiting, it doesn't help anybody.
Well, and it's also a bigger, larger question about what does the media want you to believe, and that's I think one of the big pieces of this segment. It's like the mass shooting that happened recently, of course, and was it Tennessee where we had the transgender went into the Christian school and opened fire. Like, why won't they release the manifesto? Why? Because they don't want you to see it. Right. So what are you being told by the media about what this person did or who this person is? And it just gets blocked in the mainstream media. They won't release it so we can read what the manifesto said.
Yes. Yeah. And it's an interesting, it's sad because we've been here before. It's an interesting exercise in seeing different sides of a debate that just rage on without anybody taking a beat or taking a pause.
Equal in our chat here, we got so many people saying, like Mr. Anderson says, it was not murder. Then other people saying it was murder. Stars in Heaven says he didn't murder him. Others saying Redacted seems to have picked a side here. A black man still died. Norma says we picked a side. What side? I'm curious because I haven't picked a side. I'm just curious what side. I think people walk in with like their preconceived notions. They see it a certain way. And then if we provide facts and nuance to the discussion about it, then we're somehow picking another side.
Yeah, I think this is a great opportunity to examine how you react to things like this. Like, do you need to put on, some social media about like, who's right and who's wrong? Because again, this clearly merits an investigation by people who are experts. Now, this brings up the judgment, do we trust the government to make good calls when it comes to this? That's not a foregone conclusion.
Especially Manhattan.
Right. And so a grand jury is supposed to meet today to decide if they're going to charge. Daniel Penny is the name of the Marine who was the main holder of the choke.
Yeah.
Tearing down your own community, these like, we're going to tear down New York City until we get justice for this without looking at all sides of this. It just very much feels like you're handing power to people who use it. And it's not lost on me that this is happening in the run up to another election year. And so let's see how it's used by politicians.
Sandy says, no, Clayton, you picked a side, but it's your default. So, of course, you don't see it. Okay, what's my side? I'm saying we don't have the facts. Like, it needs an investigation. That's, Dal says, no, you're supposed to act like CNN Redacted. You're supposed to pick a side. Maria says, Redacted, you are not picking sides. You are reporting it. We haven't picked a side. We're presenting you with the facts and the nuance that the media is hiding from you. So you can make your own informed decision.
Yeah, I think probably a lot of this you've seen on Twitter, what I'm presenting you today. What you may not have seen is these accounts of people who were on the train, because those are being buried really deep, 10 feet under. And I had to dig for a long time. You may not be seeing a lot of these like real world reactions. And people saying they were legitimately scared. And then when you bring up this criminal record and this past behavior, you're being called a racist. And I think that all of these facts absolutely matter in this discussion.
Facts.
Well, also, it's like if you.
Oh, we lost David, I think.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
we did.
Oh, we lost you.
We lost you for a second, David.
Oh.
We heard if you would.
Yeah, and then you froze.
Oh, sorry. I was just saying, if you have taken a side on this in any way and you weren't there, then you've taken someone else's side. Like, you cannot take a side on any of this unless you were physically there to see exactly what happened, that you're making an informed decision.
Yeah. Well, I love these two comments in our chat back to back from our viewers. Mog says, Redacted lives in the center of issues and calls out both sides of insanity. We try to. As we point out on the show all the time, Democrats and Republicans are corrupt. They're both corrupt. Top Corner Timers says, Redacted, you have obviously pushed your own agenda. Please tell me what my own agenda is. I would love to know.
What do I want out of this? I wonder.
Yeah, I would love to know. But anyway, it says taking opposite arguments and then trying to dismantle them. Case in point, the tweets at the start of the segment. So you took Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's tweets at the top of the segment and dismantled them. So is that pushing an agenda, or is that laying out how the liberals on the left are presenting their argument?
Look, the chick's whack. I cannot let that tweet go by with her saying
Yes, she's whack.
that this guy was like making a social commentary on like accessing public services when he was like that. No, yeah, that I cannot abide. So
we'll take that one. Yeah,
Yes,
if dismantling,
I am taking it against. I'm taking a side against AOC's whack ass tweets.
All right,
yes,
there we go.
That I'm guilty of.
So that is an agenda.
Okay.
That'll be our new tagline. Redacted.
The chick's whack.
We take apart AOC's whack-ass tweets. Yeah. Let us know your thoughts on this in the comments below. But this is why, I love you guys and I love having a discussion about it. I mean, no one's perfect and we're having a discussion about it. But let the investigation unfold and hopefully they'll be transparent about what they find, about how this unfolded. How long was the chokehold applied? Did he die as a result of the chokehold, or was it hours later in the hospital because of something else, or was it in tandem with that? Like, all of these things we'd love to hear all of it. But guess what? We're not medical examiners, and we were not there. So we have to rely on these things. Thank you so much for watching this segment here at Redacted. We are live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, trying to share the stories that the mainstream media will not cover. You should also come over and join our community of Redacted Rebels over at redacted.inc. That's our private locals community where we can share exclusive content that we simply cannot share here on YouTube. Come over and join the rebellion together right now by going to redacted.inc. We'll see you next time.